Today I have invited Mr. Julian Brown. I found him, believe it or not, on Instagram, and he is doing something that I think is so amazing. So most of you who have me, you've already had to do your science fair projects, and I told you guys that you need to always find something that is different, hasn't been done. It's always a need for something, right? So when I was looking through some of the STEM stuff, just because it's a habit, I noticed that I saw something that said plastic turning into fuel. So we know plastic is a big thing. We want to recycle plastic. Most people are not recycling. It takes up a lot of space, but something needs to be done with it. So Mr. Brown actually was a student at Lithia Springs, a part of their STEM program. So I wanted him to come out and talk to you guys to tell you about who he is, how did he get to where he is. And I feel like what he's doing can be so impactful, not just on the world, but just for anyone that he comes in contact with, because you guys have the capability of doing so much more than what you see. There's always something out there that can be improved upon, or something that hasn't been thought of yet that could change the world. And what he's doing can literally change the world. Okay, so I want to introduce to you guys Mr. Julian Brown. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. How are all you guys doing? Good. Great. So I want to start off by letting everybody know that I am right here from Douglas County. When I was in middle school, I went to Brighton Academy. Do you guys know where that is?
Yes.
Yeah. So I went to Brighton Academy. I was homeschooled up until 5th grade, but I went there in 5th grade. I'm 21 years old now, so I just graduated high school not long ago. So I'm letting you know that up front to let you guys know that, you know, we're really the same. Yes, I'm a little bit older than you, but when it comes to applying yourself and doing great things, we're all the same and we're all as capable. So my name is Julian Brown. I'm 21 years old, and I am founder of a company called Nature Jab. Now, Nature Jab is a company I started 5 years ago that is working on ways to turn plastic waste into fuel. So I create what are called microwave pyrolysis reactors. Now, I can tell the way all you're looking at me, and you're like, what in the world did he just say? It sounds like something Dr. Doofenshmirtz made from Phineas and Ferb, right? Well, that, in short, is a machine that allows us to take plastic and turn it into fuel. But let me go back a little bit. Let me go back to where it all started. So, like I said, I was from Brighton Academy. And my whole life, I always loved building with Lego blocks, right? Always. How many of you guys like Lego blocks? A lot. Almost everybody in here, right? Yeah. So there you go. That was kind of my start. I loved building things with my hands. And so when I got into high school, my mom told me about a welding program, right? Now in welding, it's kind of like Legos, but it's to a different scale. In welding, you're learning to build with metal. So, you know, like Legos, you can build whatever you want. Like you can build a car, you can build a building. Well, when you learn how to weld, you can do the same thing in real life, like build whatever you want, right? So I was in a welding program. I was currently going to Chapel Hill High School, right? And there's a program at CCI, College Career Institute, right? And any of you could go to this as well when you are in high school. Once you're in, you go there? Oh, there you go. So yes, any of you could go to CCI and yourself, and they have welding programs, they have cosmetology classes, they have all types of different things there. But I chose welding because, like I said, I always liked to build, right? Now, prior to this, I was in the 10th grade when I first started gardening. And the reason why gardening is important to what I do is because in gardening, you are, of course, planting things, you're connecting with nature. And something that we see in nature is in nature, there's no such thing as waste, right? In the natural world, we know that we have the ocean plastic, we have landfills, we throw things away. But if you go look at a forest, right? Those leaves that fall on the ground, well, what eventually happens to them? Does anybody know what happens to leaves that fall on the ground? Yes?
They decompose.
Exactly, they decompose and they essentially become dirt again. They become fertilizer for the rest of the trees. So we as humans, we might see something like these leaves that fall off the trees as waste, but in nature, these things that are waste are really energy. They're really useful products. And so in gardening, I used to do this thing called composting, which is when you would take all of your food waste from your house. Does anybody know what composting is?
Yeah.
Yep. What is composting? Yep, so you take your food waste, like strawberry stems, apple cores, things that you normally throw away that are just food, and you end up turning them into fertilizer, into something useful. So I would compost all of my family's food waste. And after all the food would turn into like soil again, I would end up seeing a lot of plastic left in this compost. And all I could think is, well, if I'm able to turn food waste into, compost, fertilizer, surely there's something that can be done with this plastic. Now, I'm sure most of all of you know of how our oceans look right now, right? And there's this video on the internet, a very sad video. There's a video of a turtle that has a straw stuck in its nose. And some divers, they go get the turtle out the ocean and they have to pull the straw out of its nose. It's bleeding. I saw that video when I was in 10th grade. And it just made me so upset because I was thinking up to this whole point, okay, I recycle my plastic, right? I throw my plastic in the recycle bin, so I'm not contributing to the ocean plastic, right? Because I pay for recycling, right? Well, guess what? I did research, and less than 5% of plastic is recycled. That means that if you put 100 water bottles in a recycling bin, only 5 of those will actually get recycled, right? So basically, almost no plastic gets recycled, and we have been lied to when they're telling us they recycle it. In fact, a lot of plastic that we put in our recycle bins here in America, they end up going overseas. They put them on huge ships, and they end up going to, they used to go to China, but now they go to nations like Indonesia and some nations in Africa. They can't do anything with it. They end up putting the plastic in rivers. The rivers take it to the ocean. So I did that research, and I was so upset because up to this point, I thought, I'm recycling, it's doing something, and all we're ever told is the problem, the oceans, the landfills, just how bad plastic is. You can't even drive anywhere and look out the side of your window when you're driving, right? Or when you're in the car and not see plastic at the side of the road. We all see that. And so that made me start to ask questions, right? I saw a problem and I started to ask questions. I saw, okay, they tell us they're recycling, but they're not. So I started to ask, why aren't we recycling, right? Why is it that most of this plastic is ending up in the ocean? And then there is where you enter this path where you're able to come up with a solution. You have to start asking yourself why and break down things, right? So I asked, why isn't plastic being recycled? And you know what I found out? I found out it's because most plastic is too dirty to be recycled. So, let's take, for example, you guys have a bag of Cheetos, right? That's made of a type of plastic. But of course, we all know, like when you have Cheetos, look at your fingers, right? You have the Cheeto dust on your fingers. The same thing happens inside the bag. When the bag has that Cheeto dust in it, they can't recycle it. It's too dirty, right? And to me, I'm like, well, almost every plastic is going to have food on it, food residue, right? How much plastic do we get that comes in contact with food? So I asked myself once again, why can't they recycle contaminated plastic? And it's because current recycling works like this. You take like one piece of plastic, you make a new piece of plastic with that, right? So that's limiting because think about it, right? Let's say I do have plastic that's really dirty, right? Like a water bottle that got really muddy, dirty water in it. Would you want to drink out of a new water bottle made from that really dirty water bottle? No, it just doesn't sound good, right? It sounds like it's contaminated, it's dirty. So then I start to figure out or ask myself, okay, well, if plastic is too dirty to deal with or recycle that way, what's another way we can do things, right? And I was thinking of ways that we can break down things. And something that breaks down everything, no matter how dirty or clean it is a fire, right? Like you can throw anything on a fire, it will catch on fire and burn. But we all know if you burn plastic, what happens? Who knows what happens if you burn plastic? Yeah, bad air, bad pollution, really bad. It's horrible, right? It'll make people sick. It's bad for the environment if you just burn plastic. That's not an option. In fact, a lot of recycled plastic actually ends up just being burned because it gets sent to these countries that cannot deal with it, and they just have to burn it. So that's not an option. But there's something that's the next best thing to burning, where it's similar to burning in the way that it can break down the plastic no matter how dirty or clean it is, but at the same time, it doesn't make pollution. It does not make the black smoke. And that is something I found by doing research, asking questions. I just kept asking, what is this thing? How can I burn the plastic without burning it? And that is the process of pyrolysis. Now, I don't know if you guys have heard of that word before. It is a word in chemistry. And of course, chemistry class really isn't taught until you're around high school. But the word pyrolysis is actually a word that even most adults don't know, right? So I found it by continuing to do research. I'm sure most of you have phones, right? Most people nowadays have phones, or at least a computer. And if you have one of those, you have access to research online, asking questions. And I'm telling you guys this because I started when I was in high school, right? So I found pyrolysis when I was 17 years old in high school, a junior in high school. And I'm telling you guys right now that you guys can find something now. Nobody said you have to be a high schooler. Nobody said you have to be a college graduate. Nobody said you have to be 50 years old to be an inventor. You can start right now because all of you have access to the exact same things I had access to. So I was 17 years old in the welding program in my high school, and I built my first pyrolysis reactor, right? My first machine that turned plastic waste into fuel was about the size of a pot that you would put on your stove. It was pretty small. In fact, I would say, you know what? It was about the size of this right here. It was a really small machine. I could pick it up like that, right? And I really just built it to see if this was real, right? Because once again, I told you guys I was in welding. So being in welding class, I knew how to build with metal. To build a reactor, you have to, it's kind of like your oven. Your oven is made of metal, right? You really can't build an oven out of anything other than metal because it gets really hot. Yes?
Is welding plastic? Is that why we use the fire to make stuff like?
Yeah, so it's not exactly fire. We do use fire, but in welding, a lot of it is using electricity to melt metal together, right? And almost everything in this world is welded. Even these tables, the legs of these tables were probably welded, for example. And almost anything that's made of metal coming together is welded. So I knew how to weld and put things together with metal. So I put together my first reactor, right? It had to be made of metal. It gets really hot in there. And so the process of pyrolysis is broken down like this. So plastic, how does it work, right? Plastic is actually, I'll ask you guys first. Does anybody know what plastic is made of? So nobody knows, and that's I actually expected that, and because most people don't know what plastic is made of, and that's a part of the issue. What if I told you guys this? Because plastic is just trash, right? When we're done using it. What if I told you that plastic is made of the same thing that we make gasoline, diesel, jet fuel, rocket fuel, natural gas? What if I told you that plastic is literally made of the same thing that all of the fuels of this world are made of? Did you guys know that? Exactly. And so that's a part of the issue in why we have this plastic pollution problem to begin with, because they tell us that plastic is trash and that it's polluting the oceans, is horrible, but they won't even tell us or educate all of us on what it's even made of to begin with. Plastic is made of petroleum. Plastic is made of crude oil. Does anybody know what crude oil is?
Yes.
Yes, so crude oil is what we mine from the ground to then refine into fuels, like when you go to the gas station. That gasoline that you get from the gas station came from crude oil, and so does plastic, right? So plastic is essentially like the solid form of crude oil, right? Just like how water has 3 phases, so does crude oil. Water, what are the 3 phases of water? Who knows? Yes? Yes? Yep, solid, liquid, gas. Solid, liquid, gas. Just like water, water can be ice, water can be water, or water can be steam, so can crude oil. Crude oil, the gaseous state of crude oil is natural gas, essentially, right? The liquid state of crude oil is crude oil. The solid state of crude oil is essentially plastic. And actually, a solid is the most compact of anything. So plastic has more energy in it than even gasoline and diesel. If I set the same amount of plastic on fire as I do gasoline or diesel, the plastic will burn longer. Plastic literally is a fuel, right? Have any of you seen Back to the Future? where they go throw all the trash in the car, and they have a car that runs off with the fuel. It's literally that. Plastic is nothing but fuel. We all know it lights on fire, right? We've all seen how well plastic burns. So essentially, since we know plastic is made of petroleum and crude oil, and plastic is fuel, just locked in solid form, it's just like melting ice into water again, right? So this reactor works on the principle of plastic is put in there, but plastic is put into this chamber that is heated up, but the chamber is not open to the air. There's no oxygen or air in that chamber. So we talked about burning plastic, right? Now, there's something about burning called the fire triangle. The fire triangle is everything that needs to be or needs to exist for a fire to exist. So for a fire to exist, for something to catch on fire, you need fuel, you need heat, and you need air or oxygen, right? That makes the fire triangle, right? And so in the case of plastic, let's say we were setting plastic on fire, the fuel would be the plastic, the heat would be, well, the heat of the fire, and then the air would be the air around us. But in this chamber, there's no air, right? So like, let's say like this was my machine, right? Like, look at this, right? This isn't open to the air. Air isn't getting in here. So if I put plastic inside of this and I heat it up with microwaves, it can't catch on fire because there's no air. So what happens to it? If it can't catch on fire, what actually happens is the process of pyrolysis. So in science, we call when something catches on fire combustion, right? That means it's reacting with air and oxygen to break down and make smoke and ashes. But if there's no air, pyrolysis happens. And pyrolysis is when something is broken down with heat, but no air. And when you do that, you actually are able to break down something into its basic parts, return it to what it was made of to begin with, the basic chemical constituents it was made of. And just like I just told you guys, the basic parts of plastic are what? Petroleum, exactly. I don't know who said that, but good job. That's exactly what, good job. That's what plastic is. It's petroleum. So when we put it in this chamber and put it under pyrolysis, it returns to petroleum, exactly, good job. So when with us returning this plastic to petroleum, now this waste product that would have just ended up in the ocean, that would have just been trash, is now turned into something of infinite value. Of course, we all know how much gas costs from the gas station. It's expensive. Now we're turning plastic into value, into money. So I've been doing what I've been doing for 5 years. I started, like I said, when I was 17. I'll be turning 22 this year, so it's been just about 5 years of me doing this. And I've been sharing my journey online. Like Ms. Kimpson said here, or Mrs. Kimpson, she said that she found me online on Instagram. As a matter of fact, I just last week hit 1 million followers on Instagram. Yes? Yes. So I said it to say that we are in a point in this world now where with the internet, not only can we research and find amazing solutions, but we can share these amazing solutions. Because like all you said, you know, almost none of us even know that plastic is made of petroleum, that plastic is made of fuel, right? And so I made that my mission. I made my mission to start sharing what I'm doing online. So I did it, like I said, I was doing it for 5 years. I did it completely offline for the first 2 years. I shared it with nobody. But after the second year, I decided, you know what? People deserve to know that something is being done about plastic waste. Because when I saw the video of the turtle in the ocean, and I learned that almost no plastic is recycled, I'll be real, I lost hope. I'm like, we're doomed. It's gonna be like Wall-E in here. You know, trash everywhere, and we gotta like go to space, and there'll be trash in space, because it's like, what are we doing about it? So people deserve to know that somebody is doing something, right? And of course, you can use the internet to be a great distraction, you know, or you can use the internet to be your best tool. I would not have been able to do what I've done without the internet. I would go on Google and spend hours reading research papers on pyrolysis and how it works. You see, and of course, if I tell you to spend hours to read a book, you probably wouldn't do it. I wouldn't do it either. But it's something about when you really are passionate about something, all of a sudden, it's easy to do these things that you might not normally do. And so what I want all of you guys to do is start to think about things you're passionate about. Start to think about problems you see in the world that you think deserve a solution, And don't distance yourself from the solution. I don't know if you guys ever heard the saying where they say, be the change you want to see. But if you see a problem in the world, don't ever think the problem is too big for you to solve, right? Don't ever think that, because every single solution is like a tree, right? Going back to gardening, it's like a seed, as a matter of fact. Did you know that these humongous trees you can see out the window started as a seed that's probably smaller than your fingertip, like super small seeds? And that's exactly how it is with everything that we do. When you want to build a solution to this world, you always start small, and then it grows bigger and bigger. Right now, I've been doing this for 5 years. I told you guys, my first machine was the size of this, right? I could pick it up. My machine right now is the size of this entire desk right here. This entire desk. It's huge. I started small, and it grew bigger and bigger. And as a matter of fact, unfortunately, I don't have any type of presentation to show you guys what my machines look like. But since you guys do say, most of you, yes?
Do you have any workers that people work with you to help you out?
No, I don't have workers yet. I've been doing it all by myself for the past 5 years. Yes? Oh, okay. We're going to get to questions in just a moment, where I will let you guys ask all the questions you want to ask. But I do want to say one last thing. So as I was saying, most of you do have phones. So if you guys want to look up what I do, because I'm on every platform, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, etc., you look up the name Nature Jab, Nature J-A-B, and you can find my work online, because I share it everywhere. And like I said, I would love for you guys to be able to see what the actual machine and such looks like, because I want all of you to understand the importance of the position all of you are in. You see, sometimes you might be made to feel like just because you're young, or you're the youth, right, that you're held back in some way. Sometimes I still feel that way, because I'm only 21, right? I'm not, they say your brain doesn't even truly develop until you're 25 if you're a male, for example, right? So you're not even truly treated as a true adult until you're like 25, 30 years old. But that's not the case, right? In my particular case, I have done the research and put in the passion and work necessary to build something, despite anything that has been said, or despite any limitation put on me. And it's the same for every single one of you, right? I don't want you ever, any of you ever in here, to limit yourself because of your age or because of what you think you don't have. I want you to always look at what you do have. I want you to always look at yourself like a seed, right? Yes, you might be small now, but we can't even imagine how small the seeds came from those trees out. I mean, everybody, just look out the window and look at the size of those trees. They all started as a tiny seed, but you could never even tell now. And now these trees are, every year, they make thousands of millions of more seeds that keep growing into new things. And that's how every single one of you are. So every single one of you have absolute potential to do amazing things, better than anything I've even done, right? And you guys are just starting now. And don't let that hold you back. Right? What grade are some of you in? 8th. Okay, so 8th. Okay, so there you go. 8th grade. That's a great time. Great time to look. Like I said, if you see a problem, start doing the research now, right? And I know I built a machine that's here to do plastic waste. We all have different passions, different problems, right? Just like there's like so many different types of trees and plants and fruits. There's apple trees and orange trees. Every tree has a different purpose. We're the same way, right? Maybe some people are here to build something like a physical machine. Some of you might be here to do things that help humans, right? Like humanitarian things. Some of you might be here to do things that help animals. Whatever you're here to do, I just want you to start now. And it doesn't have to always be so extreme, like I need to build this huge thing right now overnight. Even the littlest amount, like I said, with me, it started with Lego blocks, right? Lego blocks. And then it just builds up over time. So I believe in every single one of you. And I want to thank all of you for listening to my story. And I want to open the floor to any and all questions any of you might have. Yes?
Have you sold some of the gas you made to companies?
No, so right now I'm still in the prototype phase, where I'm still building the machines and getting them done. But once they're out of that phase, I'll actually be selling the machines themselves to governments and companies. Yes?
Did you attend college, and if so, which college are you attending or did you attend?
I did not attend college, so it started like this. I started this when I was 17 years old in high school, and as soon as I got out of high school, I just kept working on it, right? So I ended up just focusing on that instead. Yes?
On your Instagram, YouTube, and all that, you have pictures of the project that you're working on?
Yes, I do. Yes, I do. Yes?
How do you heat the machine?
So my machine is heated with microwaves. So essentially, I saw it like this, right? There's plenty of different ways you can turn plastic into fuel, and the most common way is what is called a traditional pyrolysis reactor, and that's when you have a chamber, like I said, like let's just use this as an example, and you have a fire that's under it, and that makes the container hot and heats it up and breaks down the plastic. And I did that for a little bit, but I started to get into microwaves because I realized something, right? Think about it, I'm gonna ask you guys a question, and we all should know the answer to this. If you're trying to cook a Hot Pocket, what's quicker, the oven or the microwave?
Microwave.
Yep. What cooks it to a point where it's like almost too hot for you to eat, right? The oven or the microwave? Yep. So that's a very great point there. What's your name, by the way? D'Angelo. So he made a very smart comment there where he said microwaves heat the water molecules, and that's true. So microwaves do this thing called volumetric heating, which is heating from the inside out. When you cook in your oven, it's heating it from the outside in. But microwaves heat it from the inside out. That's why when you have a Hot Pocket, if you don't cook it long enough in the microwave, the outside will be cold, the inside will be lava, right? We all know that. So what happens is the microwaves heat the water molecules within your food, and they make the water molecules start to vibrate, and vibration causes friction, friction causes heat. Now, that's actually an issue for my machines because you see plastic doesn't really have much water in it, if any at all. So plastic doesn't actually normally heat up with microwaves at all. That's why most microwave safe dishes you have are either plastic or glass. So I have devised my machines in a special way where the plastic actually can absorb microwaves and break down. But that's a great question, nonetheless, that I use microwaves, and that's a great comment that microwaves, they do heat the water. Yes?
Was it part of the reason why plastic can't be recycled? Like you said regarding the Cheeto bag, like because it was called too dirty. Isn't it also because the chip bags, they're normally made out of different types of plastics? So when they're made out of different types of plastics, the machines can only run through a certain type of plastic, like one at a time, so they can't really recycle the chip bag. Right?
Absolutely. That's a great point there. So yes, I'm sure. Have you guys ever noticed on your let's take a water bottle, right? You flip it on the underside of it. It has that number on it, right? The little triangle on that number. That number and that little triangle does not mean it can be recycled. That number and that triangle is actually telling you what type of plastic it is. There are many different types of plastic. There's over 10 different types of plastic. There's more than even that. But the most common types of plastic are, and bear with me here because it's going to sound like I'm speaking a different language. We have what water bottles are made of. That's called polyethyl terephthalate. We have water bottle caps, polypropylene. We have milk jugs, high-density polyethylene. We have like Walmart bags, shopping bags, low-density polyethylene, right? And there's plenty more types of plastics. And there's some that are categorized under different things. And when you have like a Cheeto bag, like what you're talking about, it's actually called an MLP, a multi-layered plastic. Because if you look at a Cheeto bag, it's plastic, but there's what looks like metal on the inside. It's aluminum on the inside.
It's aluminum, and then after that's built off with different types of plastics for different purposes, like to keep the bags fresh, not greasy, stuff like that.
Exactly. So you're very educated on that. Great. And so you have all these different types of plastics in one bag, and there's not a machine that exists that can like turn all those different types of layers into a whole new bag. And so unless you have something that can truly just destroy the plastic, like either burning it or having a pyrolysis reactor, those plastics are doomed to just be thrown away, right? The great comments. What's your name? Ruby? Oh, well, thank you very much for those comments there. Any other questions? Yes.
Where are you getting your plastic from now?
So I get my plastic from my family, from my local community people. Like I used to do karate, my karate teacher. I used to do boxing, my boxing gym. And then I also accept plastic from people. So people oftentimes will ship me plastic. Like I said, I do have a large following online of people all over the world. So if people some people really don't want to throw away their plastic. They don't want it to end up in the landfill or ocean. So they'll ship it to me, and then I can truly recycle it. Great question. Yes?
What steps did you take to start your business and how do you put yourself out there?
Great question. So I started, so the truth is this, I have been a business owner for a long time, even before this business of turning plastic into fuel. Before this business, I had a jewelry business, and I had my own welding business, and my own handyman business. And so when it comes to starting a business, since I've started up to this point almost 5 businesses, it's almost always the same thing when it comes to starting a business. When you start a business, there's always a risk. Always a risk and always a lot of work up front that you won't get paid for, right? Those are the most common things. So the risk is usually the amount of money you have to put in up front. For example, my first machines, right, I was paying 100% out of my own pocket, every part. And I was not making any money off of it, right? $0. I wasn't sharing it online, anything. So I was, even though my first machine cost about $700, which isn't that much compared to what I do now, that $700 was a lot because I was just a student putting together something, barely making money here and there. That's the risk. And then all the work that goes into it, right? You have all the labor when it comes to building it and all this, and you're not getting paid for that. All you have is your faith and belief in yourself that you're going to do something with this. So this applies to any business ever that any of you would do. I know there's some of you in here that will be or probably already are entrepreneurs. And so you always have a risk, and you always have that place of, okay, all this hard work, you have to believe in yourself. And you have to believe that you can make it work, but you also have to always be ready to learn. When you're starting any type of business, you have to be ready to change courses if there's a better way to do things. Like I said, when I first started, I had my machines running off of a fire. And I found out, just by doing it, that's not good. So I completely switched and moved to making my machines operate off of microwaves. Now here's the thing. If you go look up plastic into fuel reactor on YouTube, you can find videos from people from especially some different other countries overseas, like India and China, for example. They'll have videos of people building homemade small machines that run off of a fire. It's pretty easy. There's guides online to do that, right? Relatively easy if you know how to weld. But to make one that runs off of a microwave, to this day, I have not been able to find anybody that has shown how to build a microwave reactor yourself at home. And so that's why I started to share it, because I'm like, nobody's saying how to do this. I had to just kind of figure it out as I went. It was very difficult, but I was willing to go into a difficult path because I realized that that's what needed to happen, right? So that applies to any business. You have to always be ready to learn and to adapt. And then if you do that, no matter what your business is, you will be successful, right? So that was a great question, by the way. Thank you. Yes?
So when you make it into your fuel, how do you get it to without it being dangerous?
So, great question. So, the way how this process works is the plastic is put into the chamber, the microwave's heated up, and as we talked about, of course, it's not catching on fire. So what ends up happening is the plastic actually breaks down into a vapor, almost like how water turns into steam. But when the plastic breaks into this vapor, it's a permanent chemical change. So this vapor is no longer plastic. This vapor is actually the gaseous form of crude oil again. And so what do clouds do? They rain because condensation happens. So clouds come from steam, they go into the air, and then they condense and then make rain. So the same thing happens to this crude oil vapor. It is then condensed, and instead of rain coming out, it's crude oil. And that crude oil, well then, I can collect that crude oil, right? And crude oil, if any of you have ever seen it, it's kind of like brown or black, it's dirty. You can't really put it in an engine, right? So then there's another process it goes through called refinement or distillation. So I refine this crude oil that's dark, it comes over, and then once I refine it, it becomes golden. It becomes golden like gasoline that you get from the pump. And then that goes right into engines. And then that specific gasoline or the gasoline alternative that comes over, I have absolute control over what it is, what it's made of. So I can control how clean or dirty that is, right? Based on how my machine is built and how it operates. So great question. Any other questions?
I have a question.
Yes.
So, I saw one of the interviews you did, I believe it may have been Fox 5, where you talked about the explosion.
Mm-hmm.
Can you please explain, during that time, what made you continue to push forward? Because most people, when they have a setback, they don't always continue. So what was your drive to keep going?
Absolutely. So, I forgot to mention this in my story, but just last year in the beginning of summer, at the end of May, my machine exploded, and I was caught in the explosion. And I ended up having to be hospitalized because of my burns. As a matter of fact, let me see if you can see. Can you guys see that discoloration on my, this is just one leg. My other leg was a lot worse. You can see,
Oh, it is.
I have, it almost looks like I have vitiligo, right?
Yeah,
But I don't.
vitiligo, right?
Yeah, so I was burned. I had second-degree burns on both of my feet. I couldn't walk for almost a month. From my machine, I made a mistake. It kind of goes back to what I was just saying earlier about you have to always be ready to learn with a business, right? But that time was really tough. It was a very tough time because, you see, of course, the burns hurt, and it sucks not being able to walk, but I was set back. Up to this point, I was building these machines in my parents' backyard, right? But after I had this huge explosion, they said, get out. They said, you gotta get out of here. And so I was stuck now because I was like, okay, I gotta get out the backyard. I can't run the machine there anymore, but I don't know where to go. And I had to, at this point, doing these machines was my full-time job. So I didn't have any way to make money unless I was working on the machines. But I couldn't do it. So for 5 months, I was searching. I had to search for land, a property to get where I could run the machine. And so this space was so tough because, of course, you're set back, you're hurt, and then, it's a great time to get discouraged, right? Most of the time, when we go through things that are such a setback, our minds for a second will tell us, why we should give up, right? But in those moments, that's when you have to tell your mind, right? I'm not giving up. I'm going to keep going. It doesn't matter what position I'm in. This was a learning experience. You see, when I was caught in my explosion, let me show you guys what I was wearing. I was wearing shorts, a short sleeve shirt. That was it. I'm working with flammable chemicals. I'm refining things that can catch on fire and blow up. And I didn't even have safety gear on. So that was a huge error on my part. I learned. Now I never use the machine without safety gear, right? And I'm fortunate and I'm grateful that, of course, the explosion was aimed at my feet and not at my face, or I probably would be blind. I look like Freddy Krueger right now, right? So you always have to be grateful for everything, every problem you have. And that was the mindset I had to be in after that explosion. I had to look at the gratitude of it. At least I can walk again. At least it wasn't my face. At least I'm in the position where I can learn from this, right? At least I'm still alive, right? As a matter of fact, my mom said the explosion, because she was at the top of the house when it happened. Like, she was at the second story, and she saw it out the window. She said it looked like a mushroom cloud, and I was in the middle of it, right? So it was an absolute blessing that I survived out of that. Yes?
So when the thing exploded, like anything happened to the house?
Well, I had my machine really far away from the house, but it was near a tree, and that tree, half of it got like charred, right? So the tree is very tall as well. So, like I said, I'm just blessed that I'm out of that and I survived. But, when you're starting a business, when you're doing anything, when you're focusing on your passion, when you're building what you want to do, you might not have an explosion, but you will have something that happens that is really tough. It's just how life works. You will at some point in time. And no matter what happens to you that's tough outside of you, right? Because like the explosion, that was outside of me. It wasn't within me where I was set back. The setback, or if you give up, whether you keep going or quit, is within you. That's your mindset, your spirit, how much you believe in yourself and what you're doing. So if no matter how hard something can get from the outside, I just want all of you to always remember to believe in yourself. Because at the end of the day, no matter what happens outside of you, if you believe in yourself within you, nothing can stop you or set you back. Because you're just going to keep going, right? I remember the day after the explosion, I was thinking about getting back out there until my parents told me, you can't do this here anymore. But that just goes to show you the mindset I was in, where I'm like, okay, I messed up. I learned from that error. Let's improve. Let's not make the error again, but let's keep going. Because you know how I saw it? I saw it like this, guys. If I don't do this, who's going to do it? Because look at the oceans now. Look at the litter we have now. Plastic isn't being solved. So I just saw it as a matter of, this path was bestowed upon me and it needs to be done. And I'm going to do it even if my life is at risk, and I'm going to be safe as I can, and learn. Any other questions? Yes? No, I didn't have anything flammable around. So fortunately, nothing caught on fire. One of you got a question over here? Yes? So how much, you said how much fuel does it produce in an hour? So the machine actually usually runs for about 5 hours at a time for a batch of plastic. And usually, every 10 pounds of plastic will give us 1 gallon of the crude oil, right? So that's about 4.4 kilos to 4 liters of, yes?
How long does the refining process take?
So the machine operates for 5 hours, and the refinement process is about, it depends on how much you have in there at once, but on average it's about 3 hours. Yes?
And what do you do with the oil, with the oil that you produce?
So the oil I produce is then refined, right? And then once it's refined, it's made into, like a gasoline alternative, a diesel alternative, jet fuel alternative. And I take those alternatives, and right now I'm doing testing with them to see, do they work in engines? So I'm sure that might be a question a lot of you have. Yes, I have put all of my fuels in engines. The beginning of last year, I ran a diesel truck off of my engines right here in Georgia. Just in December, I went to Texas, and I met a guy, a really cool guy. His name is Dr. Parkenstein, actually. You guys should look him up, too. He's pretty big. He has, I think, 1 million on TikTok. He does stuff with electricity. But nonetheless, he had a 1928 vehicle, a car that's almost 100 years old. I ran it off of my fuel. And then in September of last year, there's another guy you guys should look up. His name is Moses West. He makes machines that take air and make water out of the air. So you can, any place that is having a drought, you can put up these machines there, and it will literally take the air and make water out of it. So anyways, I went upstate near New York, and I ran his water generator off of my fuel as well. So I've tested my fuel in many different engines, and I'm currently doing some more other scientific things, tests to my fuels, to see how they compare to gasoline and such like that. But that's usually what I do with my fuels. Yes?
Is your fuel eco-friendly, and does it produce any bad things?
Yeah, great question. So I'm actually going to be doing a lot of those tests this year. So I'm going to be taking my fuel to Tennessee. Probably within the next month, to get an emissions test done on it to see after it burns in a car and goes through the catalytic converter and the exhaust, what are the emissions, right? Will it pass the emissions test? And then I'm also going to be sending my fuel out to analysis. So for example, when they make gasoline at these big refineries, they sample and test the gasoline like a few times a day to make sure it's up to par. And so I'm going to send my gasoline alternatives and such to those types of labs to see and make sure that it's eco-friendly. Yes?
How do you know what types, what plastic to use for the different types of fuel?
So every plastic will make pretty much every type of fuel. So think about it this for instance. If I put plastic bags in my machine, plastic bags will give me crude oil. If I put milk containers in my machine, they'll give me crude oil. But that crude oil product will be made up of different amounts of a gasoline alternative, a diesel alternative. So let's say plastic bags might give me mostly the gasoline alternative, or what I call plastiline, right? And maybe milk containers would give me mostly a diesel alternative. That's the only difference. And I'm able to tell which is which because, for example, every fuel has different properties. So what would happen if you have gasoline and you drop a match into it? A lit match.
It gets on fire.
Yep. Let me ask you guys this. What happens if you have diesel fuel and you drop a match into it? It won't even catch on fire. Diesel won't even catch on fire. If you could drop a lit match, you could hold a lighter to diesel. Don't do it. Don't do this. I'm just telling you that it wouldn't catch on fire because there's different characteristics and properties to every fuel, right? So I can tell when I'm making my gasoline alternative, my diesel alternative, because I do tests like that to see. That's called the flashpoint test. Yes?
What's the difference between gasoline what's the difference?
Yeah, sure. Great question. So the difference between gasoline and diesel, there's a few different reasons, but the biggest difference is what is called the flash point. And that goes back to what I was just saying before. The flash point is basically the temperature in which something will catch on fire. Like I said, you could take a lit match, you could take a spark. You know, have you guys ever shocked yourself like when you run on a rug and you touch a metal door and it like shocks you, it zaps you? That little zap is enough to catch gasoline on fire. That's small. But diesel has a much, so the flash point of gasoline is really low, right? But diesel has a much higher flash point. Like I told you, you can take a lit match and drop it in a puddle of diesel, it will not catch on fire. So a diesel engine is specially tuned to deal with that higher flash point of diesel, while a gasoline engine is specially tuned to deal with the low flash point of gasoline. So that's a difference. Yes? What was that?
You mix those two together?
No, you can't mix them together and put them in an engine. I saw you had a question.
Do you feel like you really bounced back this year from after the accident?
May I say it again?
Do you feel like you really bounced back after the accident?
Yes, I did. So after the accident, I had my most success ever. So, like I said, it took me about 5 months before I was able to get back to working on the machine. As a matter of fact, if you guys do go and look through my Instagram page, you just keep scrolling down, you'll see all the videos of like when I got in the hospital, and then like there's this gap of time before when I was saying like I'm looking for land, and then I found the land and I got it. But then once I got on the land, there was a lot of work to do. I had to move everything over there, I had to build everything up again. Of course, safely this time. But then after that, I've had some of my most success ever. I've had my biggest videos ever. I've made amazing progress. I was just on the news in November, the end of November. And then, like I said, I just ran the almost 100-year-old vehicle off of my fuel made from plastic just in December, right? So, you know, and to me, it wasn't really much of a surprise that I would have more success after I came back, because life has these patterns, right? It's like a wave. Waves of the ocean, it goes up and it comes down. So you're gonna have those times where you go through something hard, where you're down, but then it's gonna go back up again. And I'll tell you guys now, there's gonna come a time in the future, who knows when, where something's gonna happen. I'll be back down again, but I'm gonna go back up. And then, you know, every time you face a harder hardship, you face an even better turnaround. So that's why it's so important to have faith and believe in yourself at all moments, because if I had given up, I would have never made it on the news, right? I would have never ran the vehicle, right? I wouldn't be working on the machine. I wouldn't be here right now if I had quit, right? But I kept going because I knew that the hard work would pay off. And so that's why you must believe in yourself. Yes?
Why do you want to sell your thing instead of producing yourself?
That's a great question. So selling fuel is really difficult, especially an alternative fuel. That's because fuel has to go through so many regulations in the US to be able to be sold as is, right? And the truth is this, right? I turned plastic into fuel, but that actually is not the goal of my machine. The goal of my machine is to be able to get rid of plastic, right? I always told people, I don't care if it turns the plastic into dirt. As long as we are able to destroy the plastic and get rid of it to where it's no longer an issue, that's all that matters. It just happens that I turn the plastic into fuel. So people that come to me, whether it's governments or companies or countries, they're interested in the machine because their countries or their states or wherever they are hurting from plastic waste. I'll answer one more question. Yes?
If you were to sell your products, would you go to Shark Tank?
Well, I have been asked that a few times. I'm currently not interested in Shark Tank now, primarily because it's too early, and also because I want to make sure that I retain ownership of what I do, because I believe in my vision and how I want this to be in the world. But with that being said, thank you all for your amazing questions. Thank you all for listening to me speak. We are out of time, but thank you all so much.